Right, karibu sana. This is Morning Cafe. I'm usually Stanley Nyarungita. It is a Wednesday, that one, your weekly dose of matters, relationships, and just to better it. And you can always be part of this conversation, 0795-045-864. Call us live, because this morning we're discussing, in case you're in a relationship or a marriage, how do you have you might probably have one of those conflicts. So how do you really resolve them and amicably? At the end of the day, nasema hii tulikuwa na hii situation na tulitatua vizuri sana. And having this conversation with Dr. Elizabeth Njani, clinical psychologist. Karibu sana.
Thank you. As
well as Dr. Julius Kimani, a counselor.
Asante.
Leo niko na madaktari hapa. First of all, I'll let them introduce themselves fully, because I always know there's always too much on that plate when it comes to matters introduction. I'll start with you, Dr. Njani.
Okay, good morning everyone. Our viewers, welcome. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Njani. I'm a clinical psychologist and I practice doing therapy, cutting across many issues: psychological, addiction, career, and mentorship. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. How about you, Kimani?
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Julius Kimani, and I'm a counseling psychologist. I have also done what we call biblical counseling, because there are people who will come from different, especially Christian background. And I specialize in issues, marriage and family.
Marriage and family.
Yes.
Fantastic. Back at home, question of the day for you is, how do you resolve any kind of conflict between you and your significant other? How do you resolve any kind of conflict that you have? We've posted this question on our Facebook as well as Twitter pages. On Facebook at TV47KE on Facebook, at TV47 News on X. You can give us your feedback. You can always call in live, 0795-045-864. So ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I'd love to take you to a Swahili proverb and get your interpretation on this. Do you start with ladies first, Ama?
When there is food.
Oh, it's always ladies first when there's food. But then in other matters...
Or money.
All right, so because there's no food and money here, we start with the men.
Survive.
Okay. So Kimani, I'll start with you.
Yes.
It's a Swahili proverb. Hot water does not burn the house. Mm-hmm. Yes. What's your interpretation on this Swahili proverb? Hot water does not burn the house.
Does not burn the house. You see, I think a house burns. You see, a house has to burn because of, the real fire. Because most houses is either wood or stone. Mm-hmm. But now I think the way they are looking at it is that conflicts should not bring an issue down. Mm-hmm. They are solvable. Mm-hmm. And eventually hot water cools down. The fire doesn't. So looking at it, I think it's just a challenge. As you said, when it comes to conflicts, then we have to be ready to deal with any hot water that comes our way and have some strategies on how to cool it down. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. I love proverbs because everyone has their own interpretation. Depending on where they come from. And then I don't know from where you come from, you'll have a different interpretation on this. Hot water does not burn the house.
Yes. Just like my colleague has said, when you look at a structure, what is it built from and what can bring it down? In this case, we are looking at a marriage, and what builds a marriage cannot be brought down by hot water, meaning a conflict can be resolved. There is no fire. Hot water, as he said, will cool down. But the issue is, how do you cool this water down? How react to the hot water and how you handle it is the issue. At the end of it, you can decide to cool it or to keep it hot. Mm-hmm. But here we are looking at a way how we can bring the conflict to a position of understanding where the two of you can be able to resolve your issue and the marriage continues.
So it means that in a house, there will always be that hot water?
Obviously. Proverbs are very good. Where I come from, they also say, if you put two axes in a basket, they'll always collide.
How do you say that in your local native?
Madhano Ameli,
I know that you'll understand.
There'll be always that friction.
Okay.
But for you to be able to deal with them, they also make a noise because they are metallic. So what do you do to reduce that? You can put something in between to prevent that. How you handle it is what makes a difference. Yeah.
How about you, Kimani? Again, do you think this hot water should always be there? And how important actually is this? Because she says this hot water will be there. Or in the local native, the two axes will always have to have that clinging sound every time. But how important is this hot water in that house?
No, I usually say conflicts are a sign that there is something that needs to be worked on. It's also a sign that you're not coming from the same background. You know, somebody said if you guys you're getting married maybe when you're 25 each, that is 50 years of history that has come together, and you cannot be all perfect. You can't be like each other. In fact, what attracted you was the opposite of you. Because usually if it's a person who is very talkative, they are attracted to somebody who is not as talkative as them because they want to talk more. And so you find usually the differences and the expectations that people come in with into marriage or relationship is what brings the conflicts. And it is healthy actually to have conflict. It shows that you actually care for each other. And you're actually thinking, if a relationship reaches a place where you're no longer bothered about what the other person does. Whether they come late, it's okay. They don't cook, it's okay. Something is very wrong. So a conflict sometimes is a sign that actually that relationship is healthy.
Because I mean, Jode, what on the street is, and in Nairobi, it's often said that if the lady does not spy any arguments, conflicts in the house, she no longer loves you.
They are not the source of conflict.
Naturally, again, what on the street, as we often like to say.
Yes, but when you look at a relationship, like he said, what attracted you to this person? What brought you together? What were your expectations of marriage? What goals have you set for one another, for each other, for the whole family? And you find that when our expectations are not met or they are outrageous, you find that we lean on one side. He has talked about being attracted to a person who talks less, a person who does not talk much, attracted to one who talks, the one who talks the other way around, because they always talk about opposite attracting. And the person who talks more at times is blamed for the conflicts within the marriage. Other times you find that the one who is not talking is blamed for not resolving the issues that the talkative one created. But all in all, you find that if you are having a time together to talk about these issues, it is a very healthy conflict. When it is not healthy is when we get to issues of physical violence, any form of abuse. That is when we say this one is not healthy. But these are the ones that we can be able to resolve. It's quite healthy. And it affects even the children who are within the family. The other one is you could be agreeing very well, but you find that within a family there is a unit. There are units within the family. Let's take a family of 4, mother, father, boy, girl. Those are the children. You find that there is the two of us have 2 units, husband, wife, and father, mother. Those are 2 very different units. Then there is the father, the offspring unit. Then you find that the father has a unit with the son, the father with the daughter, me and the children, me and the daughter, me and the son. By the time you are bringing harmony in all these units, it takes time, it takes grace, even patience, and we have to keep assessing our attitude towards that. So if your boundaries are porous from one, especially the worst is The husband-wife unit, when you allow others in, it brings very, very unhealthy conflicts that if you are not careful, it will not be hot water, but it may create fire. Who do you bring in? Is it the children? Is it his parents, his family, my family, into that unit? Because this is the core, and it helps to support the other units.
Right.
Yeah.
But a whole interesting conversation that I wanted to get into it later. Matters bringing and stepping into family members into this resolving bit. But then you mentioned about the patience of how resolving all this conflict. And so because Dr. Kimani, you've told us you studied matters the Bible, I wanted to quote Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 to 27. It says, "Be angry, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil." First of all, lots of interpretation in this Bible verse. Be angry, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. And is it practical in this day and age?
You know, one thing I think, one of the most common emotions that human beings have, it's anger. And anger is a sign that something has made you unhappy. And what that scripture means, if something has made you unhappy, then you need to ask yourself, why is it making you unhappy? It could be pointing that you have a weakness, or something is actually wrong outside there. And so in the context of relationship, we are told you can be feeling angry, but if you allow that anger to come out in the wrong way, it is like what we're calling now the fire. If you use negative words, assuming it is your wife that has made you angry, and suddenly you call her a statement, you say you are very foolish, or you are very stupid for what you did. Now you have already put a label on her. And that, of course, automatically, those words will create a fire in that relationship. So what it simply says, have self-control. Be angry, but do not sin, means have self-control in how you handle that anger situation. And for any relationship to work, let me tell you, Kaship, if you sleep angry, a lot of things begin to enter your mind. You begin to think of maybe the reason why she's not even sleeping next to you very well, or he's not sleeping next to you, is because of actually maybe the person that is outside there in the office. So assumptions begin to kick in. And the second day, when you wake up in the morning, you'll be shocked that your anger will have escalated to another moment. So when it comes to relationship, we have to ask ourselves, why am I angry? Is it genuine? Or is it because I have a misunderstanding?
So is it because the Bible tells us before you sleep, before the sun goes down, so technically that's in a day. So is this the Bible telling us that solve your conflict, maybe in this marriage, this relationship, in that day, before the day passes by? Is that what you should pick up from it? Actually,
that is very true. You see, I will give an example with a car. You know, somebody said, if you hear your car making some noise and then it keeps quiet, it doesn't mean that it has become better. Probably something is getting worse. And so, but if you hear that noise and you check it out the same day, you will have prevented a bigger mechanical issue. So it's the same thing with the relationship. If you don't solve your issues, and it's not easy, because sometimes things can be very hot, but it is very wise that if you're able to solve that issue the same day,
you solve it
you'll be better off.
So then does it mean that it's unhealthy to pile up some of this conflicts and disagreements? Something will happen, something very minor. Nilitumia toothpaste, nikafinya hapo katikati, ukafika ukaona, ukashangaa sasa huyu, ukaacha ukaiweka. Next time nilikuongelesha hivi, ukanyamaza. Okay, pile up. So maybe even 4 years later, now when you start to have a conflict and arguments, you start to pull up receipts. Do you remember this day that you did this? Do you remember this day? Is that healthy, Njane?
I would say it is not healthy, One, it brings things, it puts things out of context. For instance, we are talking about this flower vase, and on top of it, as we talk about it, I bring the cup that you broke, and I start going backwards. And I don't know whether it is true, because they say, outside there they say that women have the memory of an elephant. That from the day I got married, I can remember the particular day during our honeymoon, you winked at a girl, and it is 10 years later. That's when I am reminding you.
At that time, I don't even remember who
cannot remember.
This is.
I would have handled it that time. So when you bring a pile of issues, the spouse may not be able to even, how do you sort that mess? Which one do you start with? What we normally say when we are working with our families, we say, resolve the issue as it arises. Because you have the room to discuss it and for you to know the intention of the other person. But when you are piling up, the day you want to handle the first, because the fifth one has come, you do not know which one is creating conflict within the family. Some could have been good intentions, but you misinterpreted because you have a reference. And you keep carrying them forward. Supposing you deal with it at that particular time so that you can move on. And it becomes even a heavier load for the person who is carrying them forward.
But realistically, is that possible to deal with each and every single conflict at that particular time? Focus on this. We live in a digital era. I think now maybe in the past, when people wouldn't really travel as much, there were no, the technology wasn't as there and as wide as it is right now. Maybe it would have been easier to solve conflicts, because at the end of the day, I'll see you, and I'll see my partner, and we'll solve whatever happened. But right now, you'd find someone who works in 5 different counties so far away. You'd probably see this person 1 week later. How possible is that? And what's the impact again of solving a conflict over the phone and you're done, or rather just solving it face to face?
One of the things that we always ask is, how crucial is that issue? Can it wait? If it can't, you can find ways. By the way, they know themselves better than we know them. Even when they come to us, we know each other better. So I know when I can talk to my partner, and that is very important, even for the people who are living together. Find a good time to talk about your issues. For instance, do you wait the time you go to bed, that is when you are solving your problems? Or do you find the appropriate time? Imagine this man coming home tired, late, take a shower, eat, but you are just seated there waiting. Now, even if you call him all the pet names, sit, there is something we need to discuss. I don't think you'll be on the same page. But if you get the appropriate time where you can be able to have a discussion, not talking to each other or at each other, but talking with each other, you can have an amicable way of resolving your conflict. There are those that it could be you moved my phone or something, or you forgot to bring me my card on Valentine's Day. Does that mean that there will be no Valentine in next year? Does it mean that candy cannot be eaten another day?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The friends of mine who are telling me they're still being haunted because they did not provide anything for Valentine's. But Kimani, how practical again is it right now to solve some of these conflicts as they happen?
No, I will say this. There are different conflicts that are in different degrees, as she has said. And there are things, sometimes there are things you ignore. I mean, toothpaste, being squeezed at the middle, does that really have to be something that you need to bring on the table? There are times socks has been left on the floor. That should not. There are things as you grow in relationship, you realize they are what we call non-issues. And if you bring them up, they actually tend to look petty. But again, what we say, every couple should have and way of solving their conflict, just like an organization. Let me tell you, my brother, kama watu wanaweza behave vizuri, a lot of things would work out. The reason why couples are not able to solve their conflict is simply bad behavior. Now put yourself in an organization where things are hot, but you respect the MD. You will not go there pointing fingers, and even if you're feeling so angry, you'll not be there pointing fingers and telling him you're the worst MD that I've ever seen in this place, because you know you'll be fired, most likely. But the thing is, in the same way, when it comes to a relationship, bring good behavior to the table. The behavior of solving the conflict very well and listening to one another. So I usually say timing is key. She has said you don't start solving a conflict when you're going to sleep. You don't try to solve a conflict when somebody is leaving for work. You don't try to solve a conflict when your wife probably is just watching the soap opera she loves most. You tell her this is the time. You switch the TV off. You will not even have a solution. So we need to have that proper timing. Number two, as she said, listening is one of the greatest keys of solving any conflict. Most of us listen with a defense mechanism in our mind. You're like in a court, you're trying to defend yourself. That will never solve a conflict. You have to listen to understand the other person's point of view so that when they eventually say what they are saying, you can actually understand. But if you listen with the mentality of niko kotini na ni lazima nishinde, hiyo conflict haitaisha.
All right. Just to remind even for viewers, you can always call in live and be part of this conversation. 0795-045-864. Call in live so that you'll be part of this conversation. Utuambie, do you have any experience right now? Kuna conflict mahali na bibi ama bwana, and you want some expertise and some opinion on how to actually solve that bit. And even as we continue, Bernard Chieng on Facebook says you dissolve that union and move on. So there's something that you're talking about. I'll look at some of more feedback on our Facebook. But then now there's something we're talking about how, the whole conflict, maneno na timing. But then I'm curious. So the husband and wife, timing, expound of that really. Njane, maneno na timing, how do you ensure that this is the perfect timing?
As I said earlier, we are two in the house. We know each other. We know when you are at your best. We know when you are at your worst. So we know each other. When you are at your lowest, that is not the time I should come to you to try to resolve a conflict or something that I feel need to be attended at that moment, because this conflict is very crucial to this family. And when you are at your lowest, be it physically, be it emotionally, that is not the best time. Every couple, they have their time and they know it better than even a therapist. And that is what we say when you come for therapy. We tell you, can you find the best time for you? Because let's assume we are a couple. Our time may be 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. Yours could be noon. Another one could be 4.
Okay.
So they know their best time. And we say, not when things are hyped.
All right. Let's allow me to pick this call from Joram from Muranga. Joram, habari asubuhi. Joram, habari asubuhi.
Mzuri.
Asante sana kwa kutupigia. Muranga, mnasemaje?
Muranga tuko salama, tuko fiti.
Haya, asante sana. Uko na swali ama maoni unataka kutuambia kuhusu hii conversation?
Nakuwa nataka kuuliza if bibi yako is ana cheat lakini unaona nikaa cheat, what is the on that case unaweza solve the issue, like custom yake ataki uuze anything?
Una suspect ana cheat lakini hauko sure?
Yeah, hauko sure, lakini simu yake is a private thing, like you should not touch it.
Na labda kwa hiyo scenario unaona umemuuliza ama nini imefanya ushuku?
unaona tu hadi akiwa naongea na wao, unaona tu kuna kitu, kunao jambo.
So asante. Okay, before nikuache ndio pia guest wetu waelewe hiyo situation vizuri. Apart from hiyo kuona wakiongelesha wengine, ni situation kama ni nini zingine itafanya ushuku?
Conversation yako na yeye is so short, but with others, with those who you suspect with, who are your friends, it's so long and so entertaining. Yeah. So
hii ni yako personal experience ama ni the example tu unauliza tu?
Ni swali tunauliza.
Oh, sawa. Haya, asante sana. Salimia watu wa Murang'a.
Nitasalimia mama kwa pande ya Murang'a.
Sawa. Haya, waambie endelea kututazama. So even as we dive into what he's talking about, Kamala, I'll start with you because both of you interact with couples. When they come to you, you hear both of them. And you're telling us that kuna some minor things that they shouldn't even be on the table. But in most instances, when a couple decides to separate, is it in most instances the minor conflicts ama ni zile major zenye zili happen? What really pushes them to actually separate?
One thing I've discovered, and I think she mentioned about it, it's piling up. You find you're always putting every conflict under the rug and you're not solving it. And that happens either because one party is scared of the other one. Could be maybe the husband, when he's told, ulinikosea hapa, he erupts. So the woman is afraid of the reaction, so she puts that issue down and assumes it's not there. And so it keeps on piling until now when the main issue comes, and maybe a very small thing, it triggers a volcano of issues that have never been solved. And that can cause people to separate because they're like, you don't understand each other. Another thing is when, of course, it's a major issue like what we call adultery. That's a crisis. Somebody discovers you're cheating on them. Sometimes that can cause somebody to part their ways. And of course, there are those things where you find you're always not understanding each other. And I usually say lack of understanding is simply because you're not listening to each other.
Right.
There are people who come into a relationship with their assumption. And I said, they come on the table as the accuser and as the judge.
Right.
They are not ready to change their opinion. No matter how much you explain your situation, it will never change. That can cause separation.
I want us to go to Ruiru, where Joseph is. Joseph, habari asubuhi? Joseph, habari asubuhi?
Mzuri sana, labda nyinyi?
Sisi tuko salama hapa kwa studio. Watu wa Ruiru mnasemaje?
Huko tuko poa sana, ni kuwafuatilia mbaya.
Jua imewaka huko vizuri?
Inawaka huko vizuri sana.
Tuambie, uko na maoni ama maswali?
Mimi niko na swali na maoni. Sasa swali yangu ilikuwa ni hii. Sasa
endelea tunakusikia.
Wewe unapata kwa nyumba, wewe ndo mzee, unatafuta, unalipa bills kwa nyumba ya maji, ya nyumba, shule, watoto unawapeleka shule, but unapata bibi na yeye anasema anatafuta tu pesa ya kupeleka kwao. Haya ana nini tu kwao, tu anajali kwao. Yeye ajali kwako. Sasa hiyo issue kama hiyo sasa unaweza fanya aje? Na umejaribu kusolve na yeye anajitetea, hakuna kitu ananunua kwa nyumba, hakuna kitu anafanya kwa nyumba, ni wewe tu mzee una provide kila kitu. Na maoni yangu ni na appreciate sana huyo guest mwenye hapo ndani ametusaidia. Akimfanyia tu hivyo tu kila siku juu huku nje si wanaume tunateseka sana.
Sawa. Asante sana Jose, salimia watu wa Ruiru.
Sawa.
So you can always be part of this conversation, by the way. 0795 045864. Tafuta credits tupigie simu and throw in those questions and those questions that you have, and even the kind of experiences that you have, maybe utapata kujibiwa hapa. So far we've had 2 callers. I wanted to have ile question that I'd asked, but then the previous caller had asked maneno ya cheating. So, and then now this one, the question, I believe both of you have got it. So we can start with the first one, and then Kimani, I'll let you answer now him. The first one, if you remember what he was talking about, maneno ya cheating and the kind of example that he was giving. Anasema unashuku tu, unaona huyu ananicheat huyu.
That is very common, being suspicious of your spouse. And as we said at the beginning, how do we get into a marriage? How do we start a relationship, we get attracted to each other, but by the time we are deciding we are settling as a couple, do we have an agreement? What kind of, what would I call it? What kind of an expectation do I have within this marriage? There are people who get into marriage because they want children. Others, they want that title, security. Others, they are supposed to be, maybe it is a social requirement, but the issue here is, can I be able to handle that? But when you are getting in because of one reason and it is not met, at the end of the day, you don't communicate. Because the first issue here is communication. How is your communication? Did you sit down to align your expectations with each other? Did you sit down to agree on the core issues? Because the core issues here, as this second caller is saying, the issue of paying rent, bills, school fees, and everything else. How did you agree? What is the agreement within that house? And you find that, as he said, if you are not agreeing on one thing or the other, you start suspecting me. Because you never discussed that one. You never resolved it. It is under the rug today, tomorrow, the following day. You start being suspicious. Where are you taking your money? Woe unto you if I meet you with a lady. It doesn't matter whether he's a colleague, a member of your church, or anybody. I confirm my suspicion. No wonder he is not providing. Just because we ignored it. So communication for me is very, very crucial. And you see, they have brought in another issue of finances. And if you look at the research on marital issues, communication, finances, and we call it conjugal rights, but we can call it the way it is sex. Those three are the major causes of conflict within the marriage.
Right.
And you'll find that we'll be negotiating round one because we don't want to address it. But if they are addressed, it becomes a very smooth ride for us.
The previous caller talked about matters of providing. Kinema, I'll let you handle that. But before that, let's pick this call from Mark from Machakos. Mark, habari asubuhi. Mark kutoka Masaku, habari asubuhi. Hello Mark, sijui kama unaweza tupata, unaweza mute TV, uongee na sisi. Right, Mark, jaribu tena tupigie. You can always be part of this conversation. 0795-045-864. Call us live. Always also text us 22047. Ama pale WhatsApp, ama pia Facebook at TV47KE. So matters providing, as Jose kutoka Ruiru alikuwa anauliza. Yeye ameprovide lakini inaonekana ni kama maneno haiendi vizuri kwa nyumba.
No, you see, hakuna kitu ambayo inafurahisha mwanaume like when you provide and you are being appreciated. Because that's what makes a man. A man is a giver, naturally. And when it is not being appreciated in that home, no matter how small it is, because sometimes a man will bring a half a kg or a quarter at home, then he's being asked, nini umeleta? Of course, that kills that person. It's like if a woman cooks, women, I hear they cook with their hearts. Then when they put the ugali on the table, a man says, hii hata ina salt, inakaaje, you kill that woman. And so this guy is talking from the heart as a man, that I'm providing, number one, this woman is not appreciating, and she's not working. And because she's not even working, that should even make her more appreciate gentlemen. You know, sometimes I look at men when they are walking home, and some of them have refused to take buses, and some of them were hawking items. And I can imagine that man going home after running after business all over, and he walks into his home and puts whatever he has earned that day, and maybe it's maybe small, on the table. And then maybe the spouse asked, what is this? Or you know the facial expressions. You kill somebody. And that's why I think he's bringing the issue up. And he said also, there is this aspect of wanting to take things to the other side. The wife wants to take things on the other side, and he has tried to handle it. I think...
And actually now before that, because this is one phenomenon that really happens, you know, in most households. The man ameleta kitu kwa nyumba, but the kind of facial expressions is met with, ama anaulizwa mbona ulileta hii. So, and now from your perspective as a woman, is it the fact that the man did not ask ama inquire, nilete nyama nikikuja ama, you know, will that have made a soft landing on akileta sawa? At least unaweza nini. But before you answer that one, at least now we have a lady all the way from Nax. Caroline, habari asubuhi?
Salama sana.
Unaweza ongeza volume ya ukiongea na sisi, upaze sauti kidogo, alafu tuambie uko na swali ama maoni.
Niko na swali.
Yes, uliza.
Habari zenu asubuhi?
Yes, tuko salama.
Hata mimi niko salama, niko nauliza aje. Mimi niko na mume. Niko na mume.
Okay.
And I feel like somehow niko mimi.
Haoni kama?
Naona kama ni slave. I feel like I'm slave. Kwa sababu nikuja hivi and sijawahi enda kwetu hadi fungine mwambia.
Ni dalili gani umeona, labda umeona huyu ni player?
Nasema aje mari.
Endelea.
Na nikimwambia nataka kwenda kwetu bibi nimepita. Ngoje. Nikikaa nimwambia mara kuna pesa, nikimwomba usaidizi kitu kwa kwetu hata yeah, so nilikuwa naweza handle baadhi timu wa kuambiwa kanyanga vile ya nataka Kenya na mfurahisha. So help.
Mmepata swali my guests?
It's not so clear.
Yeah, nisaidia naweza handle aje naweza handle aje na vibaya.
So ndio kufupisha swali ndio okay, so anauliza anaweza handle haje the guy. Okay. Sawa. Asante sana Karo kutoka Nakuru.
Karibu.
Right, so in a nutshell, feels like the guy is a player and anauliza anaweza handle aje. Yes, but before that we were getting into the providing bit, and so I was actually now coming to getting the woman's perspective, because he's saying huyu mwanaume amejitolea, ameenda pale kahok akapiga biashara yake vizuri, akarudi nyumbani, akaprovide, akaleta kama leo, akasema leo na surprise watu na kilo nusu ya nyama. Anaangaliwa na bibi, anamuuliza nini umeleta, ama even the kind of facial expressions. So my question is, if the guy would have asked, nilete ABCD, yes ama no, if it's a yes, nakileta, will that be a soft landing? Ama how should that change now?
Well, it depends on the individual, and here the individual is the lady, and also household. How do you plan your things? What is your plan for that particular week? Because with the current economy, we are all struggling to find something to put in the mouth. You know the priorities. what are your priorities in the home? Because if the priority is unga, that is what should be provided. But when you look for the candies, it may not come in. Our expectation also should be aligned to our source of income, to the income that we have. Because I would not expect to get Uber to bring me here while I would have taken a mat. I saved 300 to buy something, yet you expect to be paid for Uber to go where you are going. So what are the expectations? What are the plans within the house? And I don't think it is not wrong to call, but by the time you are leaving the house, you know what is expected, what is required. And that is what the man was able to provide. So there's one thing that has happened within the country. We talk about peer pressure coming only experienced by the youths, the students, the adolescents. But even as we have peer pressure, am I handling my family, my partner, based on the experience others have, or based on what we discuss as ideal with my age mates? Because if it is based on that, we shall never get what we want. Because it now remains the onus is on the couple to redefine their marriage and what they want. Calling is okay, but at times you may not call. Can I be appreciative? Because appreciating one another makes a difference. Today you get, tomorrow you don't get. Can I also appreciate that you struggled today and you didn't get? Because the economy is not very good. But again, we also look at the same we said earlier. What were your agreements? How do you discuss the finances that you have? The other one was that one of me taking to the other side. My question here would be, whose family are you building? Am I building our family, or am I building my family of origin? That means I am not in a marriage. I am somewhere where there is source of wealth, and my work is to grab and take it to the other side. Meaning I am not within this marriage. I am there physically, but I am not there wholly. What has put me there is what I am getting to take to this other side. And if you look at it, at the end of it, the women who practice that do not end up in that marriage.
But at the end of the day, Kimani, are there instances where involving the family, and also even both of you as counsellors, it's healthy? Are there instances where you don't actually advise, palimefika na hii conflict, leteni tu baba, mama, uncles, aunties, walete karibu, wawasaidie kusolve the conflict?
One thing we advise, as much as you can, avoid your family solving the problems, because every family will be subjective. They will be subjective. They'll support their son or their daughter. And so we usually say, avoid, get somebody who is objective. Go to a counselor who can listen to you from a neutral point of view. And they can be able to tell you where you are wrong in a positive way. But when you go to your father and you are explaining why you did not provide, maybe your father will have a soft spot for you, because maybe you buy him medicine or you take him out, so he will want to cushion you. The same thing with the woman. If it's a family which is solving the conflict, they will understand her because they have known her all those years. So we usually advise, get a neutral person. Go to a counselor. So
at what point in a conflict do you bring in this counselor?
No, you know, there are times when it's like, for example, I will use a motor vehicle again. There are times you can change a tire. There are times you can do some analysis and you see hii inaweza tengeneza.
Wewe tu kivyako sema
hii ni possible. Lakini hata unafika, you reach a place where you know this one have not been able to solve. Every time you get on the table, the issue erupts. Now that tells you you need to have another party listen to you, and they are able to help. It's just like your body. Sometimes you get a headache, you go to the hospital, you take, you go to and take 1-2 Panadols and you're done.
So practically in a relationship, and Jenny, when do you know this conflict has really erupted that we need to bring in a counselor?
One, let me clarify something about counseling or therapy. It is not for the worst situation. You can pop in and have a discussion just the way we are having.
All right.
And it is not that you must wait for it to escalate for you to see a therapist. No. The earlier you do it, the better, if you are not able to resolve. Because here we are talking about objectivity. You have been handling it in a subjective way. Supposing you get this other person to come in who will be more objective, see things from a different perspective. That time you need that person, so you can bring them in.
Right.
Yeah.
Allow me to pick this call all the way from Wiki. Mary, habari asubuhi.
Nzuri.
Watu wa Meru mnaendeleaje?
Naendelea poa.
Uko na swali ama maoni? Na tafadhali ukituuliza swali unaweza paza sauti kidogo, ndio pia guests kutoka Mwiki ukipaza sauti, ukiuliza swali upaze sauti, ndio pia guests wapate swali na maoni. Mary? Mary, tafadhali. Okay, sawa. Tumepoteza huyo. Mary, jaribu tena kutupigia simu. When you call in live, kindly mute your TV ama utoke nje mbali kidogo, utuongeleshe, ask your questions or even your feedback, and make sure that umepaza sauti vizuri. So back to what you're talking about. So it doesn't have to reach a point that it may escalate zaidi. But then now, a follow up on that, before we also answer ile swali ya Karo from Nakuru. How do you, as a couple, how do you agree that pali imefika, by the way, let's involve, someone else?
One, if the communication again is nil, you find that there is no one time you are discussing something and agreeing. And any time that you try to resolve this, the first conflict, other things come up. And it is never resolved. And it is day in, day out. You need, like what we say, a arbitrator to be able to deal with that and to give you an opportunity even to listen to each other, because there are people who never listen.
Right.
And especially as women, I think we are too quick to judge. Just to justify our side.
Right. And because we're really out of time here, I'd like to get Karo's nini jibiwe and then get your final thoughts.
Okay.
Kimani. I think Karo from Nakuru is asking, matters infidelity, because we've had this conversation again. How does she deal with this guy suspecting matters infidelity and all that?
I think one thing about infidelity, you have to be very sure, because somebody can play with your mind. They can tell you, they can keep on telling you that you're actually assuming. So get your facts right and put on the table. And there are things, as she said, when you get into marriage, there has to be agreeables. That this I will not accept. Because sometimes we have allowed so much in. You find a woman is getting infected, or even a man. She's getting wounded, she forgives the first time, the second time, and it keeps on happening. There are those moments where you say, this is not acceptable. Do you know the reason why we don't drive carelessly sometimes in some other nations? In Kenya, sometimes we may do that. But in another nation, you will be fined, and even your issue will be brought directly. So, because they don't tolerate. Right. So there are things you will say, I will not tolerate. Right. And I think that's what she needs to do. She needs to take a strong position and say, this I will not.
Right. In about 30 seconds, your final thoughts, and then I also get your final thoughts.
I will say, when it comes to a conflict, proper timing is important. Number 2, listening to understand. And number 3, we usually say, put touch into the whole thing. When you communicate, when you're touching somebody, it's very hard for you to fight.
Right.
Yes.
Dr. Njana, your final thoughts?
In addition to that, refine your communication, because it is not at, it is not to, it is with. Talk with the other person. so that you understand his view, you understand my view. The other one is define your marriage as per your expectations and the goals that you set to achieve, and don't live a life outside your marriage, because your marriage is not out there, it is in here. Either the two of you, can you redefine it and what you do want to achieve at the end of the day.
Right. Spot on expert opinions from Dr. Elizabeth and John, a clinical psychologist, as well as Dr. Julius, a counseling psychologist. Asanteni sana for giving us some of these tips. Real quick, let me take a look at your feedback before we wrap it up. Good morning, Stanley. I'm Catherine from Kisii. Every time you have an issue, my husband keeps quiet and always comes late. He never wants to talk about me, even the kids. TV47, loving the show. Great topic. Sasa TV47 is separated with my wife every time she accused me of cheating on her. There's infidelity here. And finally, mimi na mzee wangu siku hizi tunaishi kama brother na sister. Naogopa kutoka juu ya watoto.